inshallah, just a few house rules before we play a short video as an introduction to artificial intelligence. So I'm just going to ask for your attention for about 4 minutes to just watch the screens for a short video. I think it'll give you a nice overview of where artificial intelligence, what it is about, first of all, and what kind of reach it already has in society, in many, many industries throughout the world already. Just a few house rules quickly. So please, your cell phones, kindly put them on silent. And if there are any questions, please make use of the sort of pads that in front of you, a little notepad. You can write your question out there and just pass it to the front. There will be some committee members around. You can even give it to them. I will allow for some questions toward the end. It's just that we are a little pushed for time, so we may have to cut some time from somewhere. So yeah, just a few minutes to watch the video. Thank you so much.
Researchers are preparing us for a revolution that will change the world forever by looking into the future of artificial intelligence. This revolution isn't going to happen in a few decades, but in a few years, which means that the clock is ticking for now for businesses to start embracing AI. Artificial intelligence has become a part of our lives. Due to its revolutionary nature, artificial intelligence also faces numerous debates regarding potential impacts on individuals. Although it could be risky, it's also a fantastic opportunity. It is estimated that the global artificial intelligence market will reach $267 billion by 2027. People are worrying about losing their jobs as AI continues to advance, because it has revolutionized industries across all sectors. But AI has increased the number of jobs and possibilities available to individuals across all industries. Every machine needs a person to run it. Although AI has replaced certain occupations, it still creates more jobs for humans. AI can be categorized into 3 types. Firstly, weak AI performs specific tasks, like Apple's Siri. General AI performs tasks like a human. Super AI is more capable than human, but both general AI and super AI are hypothetical because these technologies are not yet developed and research is going on. However, the development of such AI will take a lot of time. The development of AGI will accelerate within the following 10 years. In fact, according to researchers, there is a 25% probability that by 2023, AI will resemble humans when it comes to thinking capacity. Additionally, the current data boom, computer developments, and improvements in automated methods and machine algorithms will provide a solid foundation for platforms with human-level AI. AI has occupied crucial sectors like healthcare, cybersecurity, e-commerce, agriculture, robotics, education, the military system, finance, gaming, and many more. AI is used in healthcare to identify diseases, helping healthcare service providers and their patients make better treatment and lifestyle decisions. We can say that without AI, we couldn't have made the incredible recent advancements in fields like robotics, virtual reality, chatbots, face recognition, and autonomous vehicles. Smart robot advisors in finance, insurance, legal, media, and journalism will deliver instantaneous research or discoveries. In the upcoming years, it is anticipated that artificial intelligence and machine learning will become more prominent in the consumer market, which will immediately affect how well web development functions. Virtual assistants, or chatbots, will provide professional advice. Other advantages include strengthening governance through better decision-making processes, shortening time to market for R&D initiatives, and streamlining transportation and supply chain networks. Given all these scenarios, AI is all set to revolutionize every sector in the near future. Given that it is expected to impact 60% of firms, artificial intelligence will continue to spread deeper into a wide range of industries in the upcoming years. It is currently driving development in our smart devices, cars, and favorite apps. In the coming years, AI will invade every aspect of our life and eventually surpass human intellectual capacities. It will be long before artificial intelligence becomes a common part of our everyday lives. As it becomes more prevalent, it will allow us to live more efficiently and improve our lives. By increasing their effectiveness, efficiency, and concentration on the primary tasks that require people's attention, AI technologies are transforming many industry sectors. Artificial intelligence will change the world for the better. Thank you for watching. And please make sure you subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon to never miss updates from Simply Learn. Happy learning!
Thank you very much. I hope that gave you some kind of, hopefully, foundation or background to artificial intelligence. So we start the program. Our first speaker is going to be talking about robotic surgery in the South African healthcare environment, a decade of robotic surgery in South Africa. Speaker is Mr. Chris du Plessis. And basically, Chris is a clinical sales representative and a field service engineer at Medhold, who are the agents for Intuitive in South Africa. Intuitive Surgical represents a company who are pioneers in robotic-assisted surgery and makers of the Da Vinci surgical systems. These systems have and continue to revolutionize various surgical approaches with enhanced 3D image quality and precision movements. This will serve to extend a surgeon's capabilities and accomplishments. Chris du Plessis.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Chris du Plessis. I work for Medhold. I'm a clinical sales representative and a field engineer for our robotics division. I've been asked to talk about robotic surgery and where we are in South Africa and what it holds for the future. So if you look at the history of robotic surgery is nothing new. We've had it for 25 years now. The first public procedures were done in 1999 already. And from there, they have just been growing and growing and growing. So even though we very often think, okay, but all of this new technology, it really isn't that new. Now, we should maybe also define what robotic surgery is. So robotic surgery is an augmentation. It's an extension of the surgeon. We're taking minimally invasive surgery procedures, practices, and we are now enhancing and augmenting the surgeon's abilities with articulated motion on the instruments. You've got things like scaling, meaning that you move your hand for 2 centimeters outside of the patient and the instrument only moves 1 centimeter inside of the patient. The other major thing is enhanced vision. So you have a beautiful 3D image on the inside, and you can even see better with that 10 times magnification than what you can with your own eyes. So if we look globally at where robotic surgery is at the moment, more than 13 million procedures performed so far. Just in 2022, there was more than 1.8 million procedures done worldwide. 3,000 papers published in 2022, and more than 1,200 new Da Vinci systems placed in 2022. And there you can see 8,442 Da Vinci systems currently in use in the world. Now, obviously, I work for Medold, I work for Intuitive, so my background mostly is with regard to the Intuitive systems. However, there are numerous robotic systems being used around the world. And this is just one company, one portion of that. I mean, in South Africa, we have several robotic surgical systems. I work in the, how can I say, the general surgery and gynecology and urology field. But there is orthopedic robotics as well. Can I see anybody in the room working with the orthopedic robotic systems? Okay, well, then we're in a bit of trouble because I was really hoping that one of those orthopedic surgeons with their robot could fix whatever's wrong with the kicking in the Springbok team at the moment. So, the idea behind all of this, and I love speaking to a group of doctors because your main aim in the world is to give better care to your patients, better outcomes, save more lives, make people live better lives, disease-free, all those kinds of things. And that is still the aim of this technology. So that's why they always refer to it as a quadruple aim. We want patients out of the hospital sooner. We want fewer complications. We don't want them to return to OR if they don't need to. Surgical site infections, all those kinds of things. You then look at the patient experience. We don't want them to be uncomfortable. We want them to be treated as outpatients as far as we can. But we also need to look after our care teams. So if you look at the way that most of these robotic systems are set up, the surgeon now is seated for the majority of the procedure. Better ergonomics, we're physically taking care of our surgical specialists. Then from there, we now have all of the other efficiencies that come with it. Analytics, training, all those kinds of things, and I'll explain that in just a second. Then we need to look at the cost of care as well. So these are big investments to get these robotic systems installed. So we need to make sure that the value for money that we get out of them is good. And we'll get to a bit of that data later. It actually is, fortunately. So as far as the South African situation is concerned, robotics has been in South Africa, well, the Da Vinci systems have been in South Africa now for 10 years. We now have 2 systems in academic institutions, Grooteskier and Tygerberg. We're expecting 2 more academic institutions to take on their robotic systems in the next year. And then to date, 14,365 Da Vinci procedures have been performed in South Africa. And in terms of the way that we're growing it very, very quickly, this will just keep going. So you can see the current install base for us is 5 systems in Cape Town, 2 in Port Elizabeth, and now 4 in Gauteng. And you see there are SI systems. The SI systems are 3rd generation. They're all end of life. We should have them all upgraded by the end of October, which we are very excited about. Now, you can see on this graph, in 2020, 2021, all of the procedures that were performed were in urology. So, Medold, since we took over, we've been working very, very, very hard to grow the other specialities. So now you can see this year so far, we've already had 201 procedures in the general surgery field. So that's mostly colorectal at this moment in time, because our funding model in South Africa in the private is, on the one hand, it does protect our industry, that there isn't anybody that just goes crazy, but at the same time, it is a little bit frustrating because we can only perform procedures which have been approved by the medical scheme for robotics. And we're making good headway, I believe, to get the schemes on board with more and more of these procedures. So general surgery and gynecology are also starting to grow rapidly. So let me just make sure I'm not missing anything here. Okay, so worldwide, and I mean this is now a slide of where the Da Vinci systems are being used in academia. That is a very good picture there to say that in the general surgery field, urology and gynae, that's the breakdown worldwide of those specialties using your Da Vinci systems. And in terms of our academic support, you can see there are a number of hospitals, academic institutions that have this now, but we also have a number of those institutions where we have dual console systems. So this is now again where this technology enhances training, because now you can have two surgeons operating on one patient. So you can have a student and a mentor or a proctor directly guiding them through that procedure. So that shortens learning curves. It gets your surgeons more proficient more quickly. And that all translates into better patient care, which ultimately is all of our goal. So the technology needs to be applied to the benefit of the patients. And that's the one thing we always, always, always need to keep in the front of our minds. Now you can see here that this adoption curve, and I'll show you what the reason is for the very steep takeoff in 2016, 2017 of general surgery going into robotics. And that all comes down again to technology. So in the same way that we had any other technological advancements in medicine, it leads to an uptake, an improvement, and everybody, picking up speed with those treatments. And here is, basically all of the specialties that are involved with those three components: colorectal, urology, and gynecology being the ones we're focusing on in South Africa at the moment. But you can see that last point there, the intuitive ecosystem. I just want to show you a little bit more about that. There we go. So once you are inside of any of these robotic systems, the training and that whole ecosystem that these companies can provide for you, this is where the benefits really come in. So because of vessel sealing, stapling, better energy for your cauterization, all these kinds of things, it has led to that spike, 2016, 2017, where you could see certain specialities really getting into the robotics. And that's where the technology really, really shows major improvements for patients. More surgeons being able to utilize the technology, and that then just means that everything picks up speed. "87% of laparoscopic surgeons report symptoms of discomfort. Surgery is hard work, and that's one of the big reasons why we are pushing the robotics so hard, is to look after our care teams. You have your complexities there. Surgery is always going to be complex, so the better we can do in order to reduce those complexities for you, the better that will be. Now, the training pathway and this ecosystem is all enabled because of this technology. Because the same technology, the coding, the machine, mechanisms, all those kinds of things that we utilize to activate the robotic system means we can measure those things, and we can now do better training. We can put that into simulators. We can now go to surgeons and say, listen, your technique is good, but you can improve here or here or here in terms of your economy of motion. So all of that technology with artificial intelligence to analyze it means we can continually improve the way that surgeons do their procedures. But here's where I want to stand still for just a second. The biggest question always is, can we afford this? South Africa is a fairly resource-constrained market at this moment in time, and we haven't been early adopters of this. Like I said, it's been in the market for 25 years. We've had it for 10 years, but it was in a very, very specific speciality. So if we now look at, how can I say, our peers in economic terms, the other BRICS countries, you can see there in that first column what the health expenditure per capita is. And South Africa, with that average of 1163, puts us directly in line with Russia and Brazil. But you can see that Brazil has got 95 robotic systems at this moment in time. Russia has got more than 50. India, with the lowest spend per capita on healthcare, are currently supporting 129 Da Vinci systems. China, they spend, under 813 US dollars per capita on healthcare, but they've got 260 robotic systems. Yes, their population groups are huge, but if we look at this projected number for where that spend's going to be going, and at the same time, the instrumentation and the robotic systems becoming a little bit cheaper as we go along, it means that in the South African sense, straight up, according to the numbers, we've got some smart numbers people here, we should be able to afford this technology going into the future. And that's, I think, one of the most important things, is that we are able to look at how we can keep on implementing this and improve outcomes for our patients. Now, one of the big things is the global data, which shows that it does improve outcomes and it does overall reduce the spend in healthcare, because now you can treat patients and you can get them out of the hospital sooner. So in our constrained healthcare system, this is a game changer. And we actually now have South African data that proves it. Dr. Tim Forgan and Prof. Lazarus down in Cape Town, they've recently published their numbers at Grooteskuur and Tygerberg, and it actually proves, without a shadow of a doubt, in our market, in state hospitals, that this is beneficial overall for the patients and for the hospitals. Okay. Any questions at this moment in time regarding this, or will we do questions later on? Cool. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Chris. I appreciate you keeping to time there. We were running behind schedule. Appreciate it. No doubt. I mean, robotic surgery or robotics in healthcare is no doubt the future. And I think, as I said, one of the greatest beneficiaries has been the healthcare industry. The urology field, from I think where this initially started, has shown massive benefits. Just a simple thing like in the past where we did open prostatectomies for patients, and one of the big issues there was incontinence, because of the damage to the sphincter and also the neurological effect. Nowadays, if you speak to most robotic surgeons, and that's almost gone down to literally zero. Almost all surgeons, their patients are continent. The issue with impotence, erectile dysfunction is still quite big. But as far as incontinence is concerned, it's almost completely eradicated by using the robotics. So if you're going to have a prostatectomy nowadays, it should be using the robot. Thank you so much. Our next speaker is Dr. Shaheen Patel. He's going to be talking about from algorithms to action, practical artificial intelligence tools for enhancing healthcare delivery. Shaheen Patel's got a very, very impressive CV. So let me get through that. So he holds a Bachelor of Commerce degree with majors in law, as well as human resources management from the University of Witwatersrand. He then went on to complete a Bachelor of Commerce honors degree at the University of South Africa with a specialization in business management. He's also a graduate of the Thabo Mbeki African Leadership Institute, where he completed programs in international trade theory and practice in African development, as well as African politics and international trade. Dr. Patel currently holds the position of Head of School, Commerce and Management, an MBA program and manager at Regent Business School. He also has experience as an academic supervisor on the Wits Business School MBA and the Wits Masters in Energy Leadership programs. Additionally, he has experience as an academic supervisor at the UKZN's Graduate School of Business and Leadership on the doctoral program. He's a former member of the adjunct faculty on the Wits Business School's Executive Education Program. He's the former global head of the Channel Islam International Research Department. Dr. Patel has over 17 years of experience as a business consultant and analyst in various public and private sector industries. Driving the adoption of digital transformation is a key area of expertise for Dr. Patel. He has led and facilitated a leading South African bank goals of establishing an enterprise-wide knowledge, where digital transformation was a key driver for success. He previously occupied the position of head at SAP Core Banking Leadership Program. Dr. Patel also served as chairman of the Career Network for 8 years. The Career Network is a network of over 900 ambitious and talented individuals that actively seek mentoring and networking opportunities, as well as corporate social responsibility initiatives. We welcome Dr. Mohammed Shaheem Patel. Thank you so much.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. My name is Shaheem Patel. Firstly, thank you for the wonderful introduction. I'm not as cool as I sound. I'll be honest about that. But yeah, I'm speaking this morning. I don't know if it's okay if I walk a little bit. I often speak more visually. I'll use the roving mic. Sorry. Thanks. Yeah. I'm going to be brief, but hopefully impactful. I chose to use the word tools in my topic very deliberately. And it would have been easy for me to put up a bunch of AI tools and do a bit of a walkthrough, and more than likely you would have nodded your head and say, I've seen something similar, or I've seen nothing like that, and you'd have walked out of here sort of not that impressed. It's becoming increasingly difficult to impress people with technology because of the nature and speed with which it moves. And so for me then, the choice was simple. Move away from the practical tools, so to speak, that one may use, and I think Chris did a very good job in showing you some of the products that he offers through his company. But I thought practical tools that you could use in your industry, both structurally as well as in your individual practices. If anybody knows what that is, you feel free to shout out what it is. But for those of you who don't know, it's an African grey parrot. And I think that's going to be a symbol for me today. I'm going to be the parrot on the stage for a simple reason, that they're known for their extensive vocabulary and ability to mimic speech. So it's easy for me to just replicate what I might have learned elsewhere. It's easy for me to just tell you what I've seen on a YouTube video. And without much deep knowledge about AI, because I'm not an AI, nor an AI person. Sorry, I nearly said I'm not an AI. I'm not an AI. Yeah, you can solve some puzzles and you can demonstrate understanding of cause and effect relationships. But essentially, we just want food and treats. So that's what I'm here for. But beyond the food and treats, I've actually got something else to ask. Anybody, again, shout out if you know what that is. 2 people knew. 2 people knew, because we know it by ChatGPT. We don't recognize symbols anymore. We've become a species that doesn't really understand what a symbol is. And through the presentation, hopefully you'll start to see a lot of things that symbolize your profession, that symbolize what care means. And I suppose in many ways we'd like to put the care back in healthcare. Just to show you the rate at which technology starts to change and how quickly it moves. This is a graph that shows you just how quickly ChatGPT reached 1 million users. And I think you may have seen some of these floating around on WhatsApp and on Instagram and other social media platforms, where it just shows you how remarkably ChatGPT is, and not only in its application, but in its rolling out, so to speak. So Netflix, which took 3.5 years back in 1999, converse that with ChatGPT taking 5 days to reach 1 million users last year. By the way, ChatGPT was not launched last year, as some of you may know, but it became a lot more popular. ChatGPT, though, is not AI, and I think that's the point of the slide. There's a lot more to the world than ChatGPT. But before we go into ChatGPT or any other AI technology for that matter, I think it's important for us to take a step back. In fact, it's important for us to take a few steps back. A few years ago, big data was the big buzzword. Everybody spoke about big data and the power of big data and how you need to harness big data to make decisions in whichever profession you may find yourself. Whether you be a doctor, a lawyer, an engineer, or anybody else, you needed to be at the forefront of big data in order for it to be meaningful. And if you weren't at the forefront of big data and you were not harnessing the power of big data, you were actually out in the cold. And all of a sudden, big data seems to have been lost on everybody because now we've been overtaken with something new. And in a year's time, when I stand here or one of my colleagues stand here, we don't know what we're going to be talking about. But to emphasize the point, this is a graph of the United States, or rather, beg your pardon, it's a graph of the North American continent. And the more dark blue it is, the more people report deaths in that part of the graph. So you see there's a tiny piece or two tiny pieces towards the bottom of the screen where it would seem a little bit more lighter blue, implying that those areas don't really report 100% of people that die in that particular area. If you look at Europe, much the same. Most of Europe seems to be reporting deaths in their regions, in their countries, with some exception. Asia, a little bit less. It seems like there's some pockets of excellence, but generally it's a bit of a mixed bag. And then we've got this. This is Africa. And maybe it's not directly related to us, at least on the first reading of it, because the dark blue in South Africa, we seem to be reporting, in fact, we report 100% of our deaths. Why is this important? Why does it matter if people report deaths? What does it have to do with AI? What does it have to do with practically implementing anything? The answer lies simply in one word, and that's access. Africa is always left behind. Always. These graphs could have been about reporting deaths. It could have been about rolling out of AI. It could have been rolling out about big data. It could have been about access to clean water. It could have been access to food. It could have been access to sanitation. It could be anything. And largely, the middle piece of Africa in particular is left behind. And so AI is no different. So all the technologies that Chris spoke about a short while ago and others will speak about later, we must ask the question, what are we doing in our daily lives, both structurally as well as in our personal practices, in our personal environments, to address this issue, to address this problem? Because as much as it's important for us to address the lowest common denominator, it's also important for us to address things at a broad level. And so, how do we do that practically? Last night I missed the gala event, unfortunately, but I'm told that there were some interesting comments made by Dr. Suleiman, one of which stood out for me this morning, was about the best of nations or the best of ummahs. And what are we doing as a healthcare industry or a healthcare fraternity to become the best at something? To not only, normally when a technology starts or gets rolled out, there's a resistance to it. Then they might become an embracing of it. And then they might become a taking ownership of it and driving of it. We're starting to see that. But as I'll explain in a slide or two later, it's important how we do that. That's the practical part and the practical tools that I want to get to. That's just to show you at a global level. It's a map of the world. Everybody's doing something, but Africa is always left behind. And we can't ring fence our discussion only to South Africa. We have a duty to South Africa, Africa, and the world. There's an idea that's becoming increasingly used in the media. The World Economic Forum has become very vocal on this idea of hospitals versus hospitals. It doesn't really roll off the tongue very well, the word hospitals. But it's an idea that came off the back of some AI technologies which enables people to care for patients at the home differently. I remember growing up, doctors would do house calls. I don't know if it's still very common practice in the industry. I'm sure it is. But it's now become a place of, instead of having our doctor do a house call, technology is allowing you to do everything you could have done at a hospital. And by 2030, this will become widespread. But if I go back to the slide before, and we think of who's talking about it, the World Economic Forum, I don't have a click. Oh, I do actually have a clicker. I can't click to all three screens, but I'll just click here. I'm very wary, and I question whether or not a hospital will be something that happens on a large scale in Africa. Forbes is another. These are global brands who speak very openly, and their opinions matter. Their opinions matter. But it's just that, it's opinion. It's not action. Neither Forbes nor the World Economic Forum are known for action. So who then becomes known for action? Who then takes AI and anything else we're going to be talking about in a year's time, in 2 years' time, in 10 years' time? Who takes that action? I believe that it has to be somebody who's got the intellectual capacity. And if you ask a child, who do you think is a very clever person? More than likely, in the first 3 answers, they'll say a doctor. So then the question is it not us? I'm not a medical doctor. I'm saying us as if I'm part of you. I feel part of you. And I thank you for welcoming me. So for today, I am part of you. I am a so-called healthcare practitioner in some way. I'm going to use South Korea as another example. Outside of Africa, I'm contextualizing this globally, regionally, and locally, and we'll bring it together in a short while. But South Korea, by 2030, it seems like a lot of things are going to be happening in 2030. This graph, by the way, ends in 2014. But the expected average life expectancy in South Korea would reach 90 years old by 2030. So put that differently, if you live in South Korea in 2030, you're expected to live until 90. Again, question whether or not that's the case in Africa and what the comparable situation might be like. Women generally will tend to live longer, generally, across the globe. I think that's always been the case perhaps, but it's another way of showing you that this data tends to be focused outside of our immediate surroundings and our immediate neighborhood, and we have to start questioning why. At what point do we start aggregating big data before we even get to AI? How do we start aggregating our information such that AI is useful to address the issue that we saw on the African continent a short while ago? Just in terms of spend, Chris spoke about spend earlier and he contextualized it for BRICS. If South Korea is going to be the leading nation, if living long is the goal, if living long is the goal for the human condition and for healthcare practitioners in general, just last year they only spent $0.1 billion on AI. And by 2030, like I said, 2030 seems to be something very important going to be happening. They're going to be spending $2.1 billion at a CAGR of 46.2%. So that means that investment is required en masse, locally, regionally, and globally. Who is going to be making the investments in the African continent? Are we going to allow what has happened in other industries to happen in healthcare? And what does that mean? China and probably other big nations like Russia, like the United States, like some of the Middle Eastern countries and Arab countries in particular, have set their sights on Africa in a big way. They've set their sights on Africa in a big way. In fact, to put it into perspective, the only African country at the moment which doesn't have a public-private partnership with China is the nation of Lesotho. So everybody else on the African continent has got some public-private partnership with the nation of China. So are we going to leave this in the hands of the Chinese? I'm not saying it's good, I'm not saying it's bad, but I'll leave you to figure it out for yourself. You may have already some preconceived notions of what's good or bad in that particular respect. But the one thing I can tell you is if we leave it in the hands of others, it's probably only going to solve economic problems for those others. It's not going to solve social problems and social justice problems on the African continent because we need African problems we need African solutions rather to African problems. And again, it's rooms like these that need to be driving the change. So how do you practically do it? How do you practically do it? You need to start launching programs. And I know there are programs in your industry. I understand that the IMA, other bodies, other institutions are involved. But I think there's an institute called HIMS, I think it's Healthcare Institute for Management, Social Science, something along those lines. HIMSS is what they're more commonly known as. They speak about getting comfortable with being uncomfortable. And a program which could structurally help adopt AI in Africa is to get people to be comfortable with being uncomfortable, starting in this room. It's well and good to be aware of what's going on. It's easy to be aware of what's going on. All one needs to do is just show up. Showing up creates awareness. But people often say, we need to create awareness about this and about that and about, we do this on a multitude of issues. But what happens once we're aware? We might chat about it, we may talk about it. When there's a patient in front of us, we say, hey, healthcare is moving, rate of change is extremely fast. Are you part of that change that's extremely fast? What role are you playing, or are you just describing what colleagues of yours are doing? Are you just sort of, well, I'm part of the profession by virtue of the fact that I'm part of the IMA. But how are you doing this on a daily basis? And I'm not saying, you need to do drop your daily routine to become an AI mastermind or an AI boffin. But what I am saying is find ways of going beyond the awareness. And that may mean different things to different people, different specialities, different types of healthcare practitioners may look at things differently. As Chris was saying, urology, gynecology seems to be ahead of the curve at the moment in this particular respect. But there's an emergence. You're starting to see things in orthopedics, and you're starting to see things in other parts of healthcare, and that needs to become more pervasive. Nurses are an important one. I'm not sure if there's any nurses here. I'm not sure if they get invited to these kind of, they do, thanks. They play such a key role in any technology rollout, and in particular AI. Because often they spend more time with the patient than perhaps a doctor or a specialist might do, purely because of the realities of life. And so in the spending of time and building of relationships with the patient, therein lies the opportunity to address those white spots on the African continent. Because as we speak about healthcare, how often do we actually put the care in healthcare? It's very difficult. This is not a judgment call. It's just an observation that I think nurses need to be trained and brought into formal programs and be brought a lot closer to the technologies as they start being developed. And as we all know, they are being developed on a daily basis, which means that the nurse's role needs to potentially fundamentally change. The nurse's role potentially, in years to come, may actually need to spend a lot less time in the healthcare facility itself and spend a lot more time learning, in a lot more time in rooms like these, and then taking it back. And unfortunately, the realities of the African continent don't allow us to do that. Any spare moment that a nurse, or for that matter, any healthcare practitioner has to spare must be spent at the bedside of a patient. But unfortunately, the reality and rate of change in technology will mean that we have to figure that problem out. And I don't really have the solution for you at this point in time. Healthcare records and centralized databases for this. I said I'm a parrot earlier. I'm repeating what everybody has told me before. You may know this, you may agree with this, you may disagree with this. It's not there, and if we carry on in the same trajectory, it won't be there. It's vital for AI to be meaningful and useful en masse at scale. Then we need to get healthcare, the basics of, we talk about big data. This is minor data. This is micro data. If we aren't able to collect information about our patients and be able to access it no matter who I am in the healthcare industry or in the healthcare sector, whether it be through a public sector healthcare or private sector or a combination of both, ideally, this problem needs to be addressed. The issue of safety and security infrastructure and how we set ourselves up. Any technology usually gets developed and rolled out from an urban area like where we are right now. So new technologies, whether it be a cell phone or an AI tool or a robotics surgery equipment, gets rolled out from the center of an urban area purely because that's where the money lies, that's where the skill lies, that's where the opportunity lies. But when does it find its way to our rural communities? How long does it take to get to a rural community? By the time it gets to a rural community, is it still effective, or has there been 10 new iterations at the center which renders those technologies obsolete? And so that infrastructure is important, but not only the speed with which we roll out those technologies, it's also about the safety and security and the ethics that goes along with it. Because physical infrastructure in this country is always at risk. Not only through crime, but through acts of so-called vigilantism or so-called social justice activists who will gladly break down a piece of infrastructure or an entire infrastructure in the name of some greater good somewhere else. And how do we solve those problems? Potentially, AI and other technologies are becoming increasingly virtual and less physical. So maybe there's an opportunity there. But even if it's not in the physical, it's in the actual protection of digital data against threats like hacking and cybercrime and the like. And I spoke about ethics, which I'll return to in a little while. But I think within the foreseeable future, this industry needs to start having roadshows beyond just this kind of a room. The public needs to be brought into its confidence far more than it currently is. And again, I'm sure it's happening. But the scale that it's happening needs to change. And it needs to change fairly quickly because we need to address these problems from a leadership perspective. The ethics around using AI is one that requires a lot more time than I have available to me. So I won't go over what I have to say other than this room, probably on the entire African continent, and quite possibly in the world, at this particular moment in time, there's no better room to be addressing this. Because this is a room full of highly educated Muslim people whose desire it is to effect change on people at a singular unit and at a scale unit. So the ethics that goes along with it is not something I should be lecturing you about. You already have what you need to know through the Quran and Sunnah, and that would suffice. I'm going to be brief because my time is starting to run out, but there's this idea about healthcare versus sick care. You may have heard about it, you may have read about it, but you'll all agree with me potentially that the bulk of your patients, of your people that you treat, are already sick. They've already got a problem. And even the ones who seemingly come for some kind of a preventative treatment are preventing something that's happened and they're just trying to stop it from happening again, or they're at risk from something that's happening in their family and they're trying to prevent it happening from them. There's very few healthy people that enter our healthcare system in South Africa, and that's probably nothing unique to South Africa. It's probably a more generalized problem throughout the world. But there are pockets of excellence where healthcare becomes actually healthcare. It becomes something that people don't go and sit in a waiting room for. Oh, sorry, I thought it's mine. It's whoever it is, that's fine. So I think that currently what we have is a system of sick care. We care for the sick, but do we care for the healthy? And what does it mean to do that? AI allows you to do that. In fact, AI allows you to do both. I don't necessarily think we have a system of healthcare necessarily at this point in time, but AI will allow you to do that. And again, I didn't want to share some of the AI tools that are out there, but perhaps in a follow-up iteration we could do that. But here's the structural piece that I've been using that word structural quite a lot, and here's how we could potentially address it. We heard of ChatGPT, and then ChatGPT, the GPT stands for Generative Pre-Trained Transformer. It's a fancy term. But there's another GPT which is called General Purpose Technology. And the best example of general purpose technology is electricity. When electricity was, discovered, invented, I don't know what the right word might be, but when electricity was discovered, it took 30 years for productivity to increase. 30 years. So put that into perspective. In terms of AI, or in terms of any technology for that matter. Electricity today is something we take for granted, and when it doesn't happen, when load shedding kicks in, we all have that sigh. And when it comes back on, there's this mini little celebration that we all have, right? It took 30 years for productivity to increase. And the problem was, it would have taken a lot quicker had the factories' floors that used electricity fundamentally shifted the way that they are made up. The way that factories were designed needed to change. That's what happened after 30 years. Everybody realized after 30 years that if I don't redesign the way a factory looks and works, this electricity is kind of meaningless to me. And so what's the message for you here? If you want to embrace AI today and some other technology tomorrow and big data and anything else that you may hear about that might be ostensibly scary to you, then really and truly a fundamental redesign of healthcare facilities and healthcare roles is required. The electricity of back then is the AI of today. We cannot have that for the first 30 years of AI, there's no increase in productivity, or in our case, increase in marked, visible, tangible increase in the way that people are cared for, whether it be sick care or healthcare. So that means we need to redesign. When a new hospital is being built or planned, the design of that hospital must be for AI and for other technologies. It shouldn't be around what we currently have with a little bit more of a fancy coat of paint. It can't be that. It's insufficient. This should be the only way we design facilities. But it's not also enough to design facilities differently. We need to design roles differently. And as I speak to students in a short while later, I'm going to challenge them on how does one become a healthcare practitioner? What are the barriers to entry today that one may experience to become a healthcare practitioner? And as a result of AI and other technologies, is there not an opportunity to shift that, to fundamentally disrupt? And if you read the sort of theme for this particular convention, it speaks to that. We cannot be paying lip service to disruption. Disruption is deeply uncomfortable. It's deeply scary. But if you don't embrace, and if not, and as I mentioned earlier, don't stop at embracing, but if you don't start to initiate the change and let the world follow, we'll always be the follower. I'm short on time, so there's a lot of slides which I'll leave you to read when the slides get hopefully shared with you. But I'll pick out maybe one more that I think is important. And this is probably my last slide before I close. There's a lot going on this slide. It's very busy. But at the same time, it's very simple. AI is not going to replace anything. It has to be integrated with everything. There's a lot of things that needs to happen in order for healthcare to be effective. There's a lot of elements and a lot of reliance on others and networking and interrelatedness and interconnectedness that is required for AI to be meaningful, and that would be the same for anything other than AI. So that's the one thing. The fear that one may have, I think it's okay. You can live with that fear, but nobody's job is being replaced by AI. Roles will be redefined and roles will change, as I said a short while ago. And let us be the ones who change it rather than someone changing it for us. And I think that for me is probably the message I'd like to leave you with. I thank you. Oh, sorry, before you clap for me, I've been reminded by my colleague. In fact, I've got 2 reminders I need to do. There's a little leaflet on your desk. There's 2 programs that Regent Business School has offered for free, both carrying CPD points, both around the issue of ethics. And so that's one sort of practical tool. I'm preaching, but I also need to practice. So that's something that we've done, which you may take benefit from. And we've also got something we'd like to hand over to our chair, but I'll perhaps do that a bit later. It's not yet ready. So I'd hand over back to the chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Shane. That was a really excellent presentation, and also highlighted the disparity between nations. Very good point that technology can either increase that divide, or if it's done correctly, may actually enhance some of these nations that don't have this technology. Our next speaker is, so obviously from an Islamic perspective, as most of the speakers have already outlined to you, whether you like it or not, you're going to be part of artificial intelligence in some way or the other. Just using your cell phone, being on YouTube, being on Netflix or whatever it is already engaging with AI technology. So it's important from an Islamic perspective to understand, what does Islam say? I mean, is there something in our deen that speaks to AI, or how we should be using it? What does our deen say? So for that we have Maulana Dr. Yusuf Amir, who will be speaking on artificial intelligence from an Islamic paradigm. So Dr. Amir is also a colleague. He's a urologist and also a Maulana. He's a specialist urologist and also a robotic surgeon in private practice. He completes Alim Fadil course in Durban, and a medical fiqh graduate of the Al-Balagh Academy in the UK. His special interest is in medical fiqh and contemporary medical related fatwa. Dr. Amir.
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. I like firstly to start off by praising Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the creator of the universe, our sustainer and a cherisher, and salutations on our beloved Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam. As much as artificial intelligence has made us become more aware of our physicality, we cannot lose touch with our spiritual selves. And I'll start with a dua from Quran and from the hadith of Rasul sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Subhanaka la ilma lana. That glory be to Allah, there is no knowledge with us, illa ma 'allamtana, except what you have taught us. Innaka antal alimul hakim. O Allah, you are the one that is most knowledgeable and most wise. And from a beautiful hadith from the Rasul of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he teaches us a hadith that we should all memorize. Allahumma anfa'na bima 'allamtana. O Allah, benefit us from the knowledge that you've given us. وَعَلِّمْنَا مَا يَنْفَعُنَا, and teach us what's beneficial to us. وَزِدْنَا عِلْمًا, and increase us in knowledge. So I've been given this arduous topic. I initially proposed to be speaking about something like this. This is what I work with. And when I initially approached the IMA, I proposed to speak about my experience with robotic surgery. But I can see, to the wiser judgment of the IMA, they got Chris to give a talk, and he's given an excellent introduction to robotic surgery in this country. So I was left with the task of speaking about robotics and artificial intelligence from a very different angle. And this is from the angle of, our deen, our faith, Islam. And I'm not going to tell you I'm a professional with regards to manning this robot. But as you can see, this is a robot that's been deployed in the Haram recently to distribute Quran and to make it easy for the pilgrims in the Holy Mosque in Mecca. There are many such robots that are being deployed. There are robots that will be disinfecting the Haram. There will be robots that will be distributing Zamzam. And there is, interestingly, a robot that will be able to issue fatwa and help people and pilgrims with regards to the various rituals during their pilgrimage. No robotic talk can leave out mention of the inventor of this peacock fountain. And I'm sure most of you are aware of the inventor of the peacock fountain. He's invented many such mechanics in the 12th century. His name is the famous polymath and an Islamic scholar, Ismail al-Jazari. Ismail al-Jazari is accorded the title of father of robotics. And in the 12th century, Ismail al-Jazari invented up to 50 different mechanical instruments that benefited the world right up to today. This is interesting. It's a peacock fountain, but it's actually made it easy for one who's making wudu. And he designed it such that there's plugs in the tail of the peacock. If you release one plug, it would release water and make it easy for the one who's making ablution and wudu. If you release another plug, it would pull out a towel for the one who's completed his ablution. If you pull out another plug, it would bring out a stand with soap on it. So this was Ismail al-Jazari, the father of robotics. So quickly, I'm not going to dwell too much on these things because we had guys who are far more qualified than me to speak about the definition of artificial intelligence. But the basic idea is that artificial intelligence is designing machines to act more like we do. And just to give you a schematic understanding of where we are only at the level of narrow or weak artificial intelligence. So all the artificial intelligence that we are using currently only revolves around this first type of intelligence, which is weak AI. The other forms of AI being general or strong artificial intelligence, and then super AI, are things that are hypothetical and being discussed as we sit here today. Now, my thrust of my talk is to give you an Islamic perspective and a paradigm from our deen and our faith with regards to artificial intelligence. And we are grateful to the scholars of the past that have laid down very strong principles for us to follow. But when we get a situation that is new to us, and it's always been the case, the scholars deliberate between the harms and the benefits. And I'm not going to talk about the benefits because it's been spoken about at length. What I'm going to concentrate in this talk is about not necessarily the harms, but more importantly, the challenges and the ethical issues that the artificial intelligence presents to the Muslim world and as a practicing Muslim. It's important that I'm not negative against artificial intelligence, but I'm bringing to fore things that we have to take into consideration as Muslims. To understand the benefits is very easy. You could look at all the apps that we use every day, from ChatGPT, Siri, Alexa, Lensa, Elsa. We can understand the benefits of the artificial intelligence to human life today. And particularly with regards to us as Muslims. These are phenomenal apps that have made practicing our religion much easier. It's assisted us in many avenues in our daily lives. The one that stands out there is the Tartil app that was recently launched. The Tartil app is like a virtual ustad or a virtual Quran teacher. You can memorize the Quran with this app. It's able to correct you when you recite to it. It's able to find faults in your recitation. It's able to improve your tajweed. So it's a phenomenal app, the Tartil app. Same with the Hilaal Trip app. The Hilaal Trip app is an app that assists those who take long-haul flights. We always have this problem when we embark on long-haul flights and we are unable to calculate our salah times, our prayer times, and even more importantly, the directions for performing our salah on these long-haul flights. An app like the Hilaal Trip will calculate for you when the different salah times and the prayer times set in on that flight. And like that, many other apps that you can look up. Again, as I mentioned before, that when something new is presented to us as Muslims, to the Islamic jurist, we are fortunate that we have deeply entrenched and very robust principles to guide us. And this is maybe where we can lead mankind and offer the solutions to the African continent, as Shaheem mentioned. We have firstly an akhirah-centric approach to anything that new affects us in this dunya and in this worldly life. Meaning, this akhirah-centric view is a view that we have a sense of accountability. The Quran Majid says, فَأَمَّا مَنْ ثَقُلَتْ مَوَازِينُهُ. And as for him whose deeds are heavy on the day of resurrection, on a day of accountability, فَهُوَ فِي عِيشَةٍ رَاضِيَةٍ. Then he will be in a blissful place. وَأَمَّا مَنْ خَفَّتْ مَوَازِينُهُ فَأُمُّهُ هَاوِيَةٌ. And as for the one whose scales are very low on good deeds, his abode will be the fire. So this concept of accountability and hisab drives the ethics of you and I. Together with that, we have deeply entrenched fiqh principles. We have legal maxims, ad-darar yuzal, that we should be repelling difficulties. We have the maqasid of Sharia. Maqasid of Sharia is the higher objectives of Islamic law. And these, just to mention briefly, are the preservation of life, the preservation of intellect, the preservation of your deen, the preservation of your progeny, and the preservation of your wealth. These are the 5 major objectives of the Islamic law. So we've got robust principles to get us through a situation like this from our ethics point of view. And so very quickly, if you look at the ethical dilemmas, they, as Shaheem alluded to, they are on a macro level and a micro level. The macro level is beyond the scope of my discussion today. What I want to concentrate is on the micro level. As you and I, as individuals, as mu'mineen, as members of the Islamic tradition, how does it affect us? Just a quick word on the macro level. The ethical dilemmas on a macro level are huge, and as Shaheem alluded to them, things like discrimination, legality, privacy. In fact, talking about privacy, we know how the Russians interfered with the whole electoral process in the US. So when ChatGPT was launched, people like Elon Musk asked for the ChatGPT to be brought down for at least 6 months before they can rethink the ethical ramifications of this new technology. That obviously never happened, and the race is on at the moment with regards to the different chat boxes and the different forms of artificial intelligence. I put job displacement on the slide because this is a major issue. I know the initial clip that we listened to earlier on mentioned that we will not be replaced by artificial intelligence. But I can tell you that when ChatGPT was launched, very soon after that, Google fired 60,000 employees. So if that's not a telling story, then we have to rethink that concept. I want to talk to you again on the micro level issues that AI presents to us as mu'mineen and Muslims. The concept of dependency. Which one of you in this room can even remember the telephone number of your dad, for example, or your spouse for that matter, and a close relative? We've reached a time or a place in time where we cannot even remember simple things. Which one of us is able to drive from here to another part of Johannesburg without relying on the navigation system in our vehicles? Are we becoming too dependent on AI? Would this lead to laziness and us becoming useless? And we know the tradition of our ummah and the tradition that is being spoken to us in hadith and in Quran is summed up in this hadith of the Rasul of Allah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, where he says, Allahumma inni a'udhu bika min al-ajzi wal-kasal. that, oh Allah, I seek protection from you from incapacity, exactly what AI is doing to us, and laziness. We are an ummah who's known for its industriousness, its development. I spoke about Ismail al-Jazari earlier on. The next issue on a micro level, and possibly spills over onto the macro level, is misinformation. The ethics with regards to information. So we know that ChatGPT has the full capability of fabricating a hadith, a saying of the Prophet ﷺ, that it has been so well preserved over 1400 years. We have chain of narrators, we have authenticity and verification models for a hadith. We attest, we give credit, we give recognition to people like Imam Bukhari rahimahullah, who came in the year 200 after the Rasul of Allah, who has validated, authenticated the sayings of the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Will AI destroy that work? Because ChatGPT can very well fabricate a hadith and spread that out into the whole world. There's the next issue with deep fakes and character malalignment. We see it today. There's apps like deep fakes where you can create a video with, for whatever reason, you take an Islamic scholar, you make the Islamic scholar on that video pronounce things that is unbecoming of that Islamic scholar, and you could malalign that Islamic scholar. On the flip side, you could take somebody and dress him up in Islamic garb and profess that he's become a revert to Islam. So things like that are a real challenge in the world of AI. And yet we have a very strong tradition in our deen and our faith, this concept of tabayyun. Tabayyun mentioned in the Holy Quran in chapter 49, verse 6, that, O you who have iman and faith, if a mischief maker brings news to you, then verify, in case you wrong others unwittingly, and later regret what you have done. I don't need to dwell too much on this point, but we know the chaos that misinformation caused during the pandemic, the COVID pandemic, and how misinformation was rolled out. The next micro issue that potentially can lead to a macro problem is bias. We have this assumption that computers are neutral, impartial. They are not. So artificial intelligence relies on the input, and the modelers and the guys who sit at the back end who feed this algorithm will spew out things that can be very discriminatory. We see this in the states. In the US, there was a state that was using artificial intelligence programs to decide which people would go to prison. And they found that this app was highly discriminatory to the Afro-American population. We see that in some of the banks that used it to screen through people that would be eligible for various products at the bank. And this artificial intelligence program, so-called being impartial, was very discriminatory against certain population groups. Again, guidance from the Holy Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us that, O you who believe, be persistently standing firm in justice, and be witnesses to Allah in this regard, that even if it's against yourself or your parents or your relatives, whether one is rich or poor, and Allah is worthy of both. So we have this very strong tradition to maintain justice and equality and verification. Interestingly, AI can be used against Islam. And we can see, with regards to some of the new video games. If you look at Call of Duty, one of the scenes is based in a street in Karachi. And it's got all Arabic writing all over it. And the Muslims are seen as people who are the villains. Same if you were to ask ChatGPT its opinion on an issue like Palestine, you would find there's certain biases. So these are issues that we need to deal with. And I don't profess to have the answers. People like Shaheem sitting here could give us some of his insights into that. Then with regards to issues like consumerism, critical thinking and addiction, this is a huge problem. There's nothing like a free lunch. We use digital platforms like Google, we use Instagram, Facebook, and we find it, these apps are really cool, they're free. But what we don't understand is that these platforms are trading our attention. And they're trading our attention and they're commodifying our attention. And they do what we call targeted marketing. Now, what targeted marketing does is that it presents to us products that we are most likely will buy. And what has happened is we've become part of the hyper-consumer culture of the world today. Yet the Quran tells us, do not squander your wealth wastefully. There's another concept, another concept called Google ranking or ranking on our search engines. What these search engines do is that if you were to search a particular topic, it would spew out the most visited sites, not necessarily giving you the most accurate answers to your search. So what you would find on the top of your search engine page would be things or sites that have been visited most frequently. And if you know that sensationalism, reaches the most viewership, and often so the top of the pages are sites that are not necessarily accurate, but more sensational and often inaccurate, and give you the wrong impressions of the topics you are searching. Interestingly, these apps that run the AI, they also form personalities for us. And they understand that if I or person A were to type in a particular keyword search, it would spew out a certain result that is applicable to my likes and my fancies and my goals. And yet person B may type in the same words, and it will spew out things to pacify his needs and desires. So what this done is that it's created an environment that we live in bubbles of our own understanding and pacification of our own desires. And we will reach a stage where we will lose critical thinking. Yet the Quran says, will you not think? أَفَلَا تَعْقِلُونَ? Will you not ponder? The other issue with regards to, on the micro level is addictive scrolling. And again, we can go into detail about this. We understand how social media is very addictive. What they do is the AI platforms behind these apps are forming, our personalities. They know what we like, and they keep on feeding you what will keep your dopamine running all the time. And often you can go through hours with scrolling into futility. The Quran tells us, and what's the description of a person who's successful is that those who turn away from lagh, and lagh is translated as futility, emotional roller coaster. Very often when we scroll through our timeline on our various platforms, we go through a story on a gross tragedy and atrocity in the world. And our very next post we read is a post about jubilation and happiness. And then we just keep on scrolling between happiness, jubilation, and tragedy and oppression. And soon we will become a desensitized person. We cannot feel atrocity. We cannot feel the sadness of a people in that sense. Then, with regards to AI affecting our relationships, I know I'm running out of time. I just got one or two slides. Look at the relationship problem in the world today. Divorces are rampant. Part of the problem is communication. And add social media to the mix, and now add AI to the mix. People are forming emotional relationship with chat boxes. Artificial intelligence has become the new friend. And it may sound really, really far-fetched, but recently there was a journalist who chatted to one of the chat boxes in the US for 2 hours. And it was, I think, the Bing chat box. It's on the net, you can Google it. And this chat box convinced the journalist that his partner was not good for him. His wife was not good for him. That his wife was causing unhappiness in his life. And it also went to the point where it convinced him that he should eliminate his wife. So this is the potential of AI. We're not playing with, a simple tool here. Nobody needs to talk about family member communication. All we need to know is put the Wi-Fi off in the house and you see people creeping out of the rooms. This is a really, really big issue, and a really big issue at the heart of ethics. And this concept of sentience. Sentience is conscious beings that have feelings, emotions. Will AI get to that stage? I told we are at weak intelligence at the moment. And we will hypothetically enter a stage, or there's a lot of people who have strong opinions that AI would become sentient, that AI would go to strong and then super, and they would then excel us. And what does Islam have to say about it? I must say I don't confess to have answers to this, but we have a few definitions. And will there be a new look at what consciousness is, where the seat of consciousness lies? We know the world hasn't answered this. Medical science has not answered. Where is the seat of consciousness? Where does life really exist in our bodies? We have this concept of mukallaf in our deen, that who is a responsible individual? So we know it's a sane, mature, a rational person. We also have the concept of the spiritual self, the soul. Is the soul consciousness, or can we equate the two? These are questions we need to ask. So will AI become sentient? I'll run quickly through this slide here. Again, these are the things we'll have to look at ethically. Will there be I-Muftis? Will the I-Mufti be able to give ijazah and the traditional form of knowledge being passed on as a chain that we've got 1400 years of chain? You know, the big issue actually with Quran and Hadith studies is that before to gain a single Hadith in the years gone by, a scholar had to travel years, maybe months, to retrieve one Hadith of the Rasul of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Today, at a click of the button, AI or ChatGPT could spew out any Hadith within 10 seconds. Food for thought. So I'll conclude. Again, my slides are much busier than the previous speakers, but this is what I want to say as a closing remark, is that we need to put on brakes with regards to AI. We're going to have to engage with AI. We're going to have to live with AI. We're going to have to use AI. But we need to put the brakes on. We need to think about long-term effects, about technological optimization and the ethical values of our deen. How can we become the authors of the change, both politically, and we can contribute to this change on the global front? You know, unlike any other technology, the rapid pace of this technology is phenomenal. You know, we had things that changed over generations. We saw the Nokia phone change into the smartphone over many years. We saw the computer being generated and becoming rolled out for industrial use, over many years. This is going to be a within the generation change. AI would change and transform the way we operate within our generation, within a space of 3 to 5 years or 1 to 3 years. So very importantly, it's an urgent call for us to be part of this conversation. And we need everyone that has expertise, from the scholars of deen to the people who are in the field, to collaborate and to tailor solutions for the upcoming future. I leave you with, an intelligent, we're talking about artificial intelligence, various forms of intelligence. And the most intelligent being, and the being that was bestowed with the most intelligence is our Aqidah, is the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And he left us with this important hadith, where he says that the intelligent person is the one who subjugates his soul and takes account of himself and works for what is after death. And the foolish one, who is the one who follows his desires and thereafter entertains hopes in Allah. Wa akhiru da'wana alhamdulillahi rabbil alamin. Thank you, jazakallah khair.
Alhamdulillah, that was fantastic. I mean, no doubt we had an excellent round of speakers, excellent content being presented, and I'm sure there's going to be many questions. So Maulana highlighted the issue of disinformation, misinformation, and obviously the Quranic injunction to always check and make sure you verify what comes before you. And remember, we live in the world where, as long as it's presented in a way that looks appealing, it's a smart, picture that appears on our WhatsApp or on Instagram. It's got beautiful writing. It looks very real. It's very authentic. We like to believe that. And I think that's the challenge that we're going to face. So it's important that we make sure that we, check this information. Just before we go to the questions, and I hope this interesting debate around this, just the issue about the CPD. So please, all members, make sure that you sign the register. That's when you enter the hallway. Please make sure you sign for today as well, because this is how we're going to, be able to work out your CPD as well. So I'm happy to open up the floor to questions. If anybody has any questions, please raise your hand. We have some roving mics around, and bring it to you. Any questions? You can even write it down on a piece of paper if you don't want to.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. So naturally, I will put my hand up first because I'm a radiologist and AI is part of my life. We've just completed our breast interest group of South Africa, and AI heavily featured. So I just want to open up another few thoughts. And for people who don't generally work with too much AI, just simplifying it, like the speakers mentioned, and Jazakallah khair for the lovely
Do you have a question?
talks. Yes. So you've got big data, you've got algorithms, and you've got outputs. So how does I can direct it to anyone, propose that how we would get onto a panel and try and regulate that, because that I think what we need. Yeah.
Who do you want to pose it to?
Maybe Shaheen.
Okay.
When I heard the question had to do with big data, I knew the question would be posed to me. I'm the only one who spoke about big data. but fortunately, I can perhaps give a suggestion in terms of what's a way forward. I think the essence of the Islamic Medical Association should be that. It should be the vehicle that one uses to explore these kind of ideas or questions. So if you're asking, what's the forum, what's the vehicle, how do I ask questions, how do I get the right people in to answer those questions, perhaps maybe not this particular forum because of the nature of the way it's structured, but there could be plenaries or sub-plenaries that are formed out of this in weeks and months to come to do that. But I think little communities of practice which can also help from a multidisciplinary perspective. So radiology in this particular example, some people that are working in the forefront of the hard technologies themselves, some people that speak about the leadership aspect will all add value to that kind of a saloon in that particular respect. I hope that helped. It's simple. It's a simple answer, perhaps a little bit insultingly simple, but I think it's potentially quite valuable. While I have the mic, Chair, I said earlier I had something which wasn't ready. During my speech, I spoke for about 25 minutes. We had something that was being laser cutted outside in the foyer by my colleagues from Regent Business School. This was using some kind of AI and 4IR technologies. Just to show you that in 25 minutes, a little token of our appreciation for having us here presented to the IMA just as a token of our appreciation. Shukran.
So AI has definitely opened up a huge window for learning. However, there's two problems. Is that we, as I spoke about it, is that AI has an intrinsic sort of problem with being biased, and whatever input that is fed to it, it's what it's going to spew out. So the first solution is that we should really be at the forefront of being on the input side. And I must tell you, and we thank the Ummah for this, there's really top level guys who are contributing to the input side at this current moment in time. In fact, I want to inform you that tonight there's an online platform that a course starts over the next 6 weeks. It'll be an every Sunday course. It's from a college that I trained my fiqh, and it will be an online sort of discussion on AI and Islam and all these questions. How do we input to change the narrative, to affect the narrative? So one big problem, as I mentioned, was we could lose the plot if we do not intervene, because we would devalue and desanctify things like Quran and Hadith, because they'll be so easily accessible and there will be so much of opportunity to pollute divine sources. So there are people that are working really, and they've given their time to this thing. And I would encourage people to join the Al-Balagh Academy. They have a slot tonight.
Jazakallah. We'll ask Mulana to make that link available and maybe post it on the WhatsApp group for all the members that are attending. Any other questions? Who is your question directed at? Is AI in the medical curriculum?
I don't know if this is the answer you want, but ChatGPT as a source of papers being submitted at university is one of the highest, how can I say, ranked authors at this moment in time. So yeah, it is there, but not in the way that we want it.
Assalamu alaikum.
1 second, hold on.
So just to add to that, I know in Cape Town, UCT, they've introduced robotics to their curriculum. So if that answers the question also. So there is definitely a step towards adding it to the curriculum.
Can I just make the point also, it's not just only about the medical curriculum. I mean, AI is going to has its application in all aspects, no matter what you do, what you don't do. You don't have to necessarily be in any kind of profession. You could just be a layperson at home interacting with your device. So it has its applications for many, many people. Who's the next question? Shoaib?
Assalamu alaikum. I think that the talks were really excellent. And Maulana, I mean, most of the things that Maulana has brought to our attention today, this concept of the alignment problem, deep fakes, those are serious problems which are being dealt across the spectrum of societies. And I mean, Shaim and others mentioned the need for regulation and strategic thinking. So I think, I mean, from our perspective as the IMA and from other organizational perspectives, it's an imperative that we work together to develop a strategic approach to how how we educate the public, how we educate our colleagues around rational use of the technologies that are available, how we make sure that we don't employ harmful practices which will damage our iman, potentially, which will damage our entire the basis of our faith, as Maulana has pointed out. So my question for Shaheem and perhaps Maulana, and I think it's also what Nadia was asking, is that how in a society which is so fractured like we have at the moment, how do we get together? Do we do it in a piecemeal work? Do we work through institutions that already exist? Do we create a new institution? How do we work strategically towards making a change in this area?
Okay, thank you. Shane?
Thank you, Dr. Wadi. Yeah, I think it's an important question, and like I mentioned earlier, sometimes the low-hanging fruit, so to speak, and the most simplistic opportunities on the table are perhaps the best places to start. And where it develops and matures to from there is I suppose, a secondary discussion that needs to take place. But the existing institutions that we have across industry, we've got institutions like this in several industries, and I question whether or not the vision and mission of those institutions are fit for purpose for today. It might have had its purpose defined and reviewed over periods of time since its inception. But I think that given the rate of change, like you're saying, in technology, it probably demands a review of those visions, missions, goals, outcomes, objectives, and then the associated substructures that make up these institutions will probably help to create those communities of practice. Probably my last point on this issue, the interdisciplinary collaboration that you refer to in the strategic thinking is vital. No single industry has the answer to all its problems on its own. It's vital that we communicate across industry.
Thanks, Shane, for that. Just to add to that, there is a platform, and actually it's not necessarily a Muslim platform, but there is a platform that has been set up where you can contribute. So these collaborators that have come together for the ethical betterment of humankind. I just forget the site, and once I get it, I will say it with Salim. But that's where we can play a role. We need to be there. So there's big thinkers on that platform and are contributing, and how we can steer the ship through this.
A question from the female side. Go for it.
Assalamu alaikum. So it's not a question, but it's more a response. If medicine and AI, there's a kind of course on it. So I'm in a allied health professional, prosthetics, and we use AI a lot. However, we need more collaboration with universities that are actively involved in AI and medical and health things. So I use prosthetics, and I constantly use AI in alignments, in trainings of my prosthetics. And a knee, it's called an Otterbach knee. It costs about $50,000 for a patient. And that's just one part of the knee. So if more collaboration can come through, we can definitely, as health professionals, we are advocates firstly for our patients more than just people who heal bodies. So if we are advocates for our patients and for their pockets eventually, we can drastically take this forward.
Thank you. Points taken. We do appreciate that. One question on the side.
I'd just like to comment. I mean, Shaheen raised the issue about when we had electricity 30 years later before they actually benefited from it because they didn't redesign the factories. And I think, and also Maulana Amir also raised the issue about the urgency of this because it's moving at such a rapid pace. I think I would like to suggest to the chairman and to speak to the powers that be at IMA, they need to form a committee that's going to drive this AI. Otherwise, we will miss the boat and say 20 years later, we should have done it 20 years earlier, because we will, moving such a rapid, like you've got a clinics committee, a research committee, and a convention committee. I think AI needs to be top in the agenda also.
Yeah, I think the issue with the hijab issue with the nurses, and IMA also was quick to jump on that, alhamdulillah, and got some resolution. So you're right. I mean, we can't say, the issue about AI and how it affects the Muslim world. but we're not going to do anything about it, whether it's a micro level, macro level, whatever it is, but somewhere the point is valid. We appreciate it. Next question.
To add to what Shoaib was saying, I think it's time in this country where we as Muslims and Muslim professional organization that I'm part of the last 41 years should start moving forward. And a good example is the British Council, Muslim Council, British Council of, what was it, BMC? British Muslim Council, where they took a whole lot of business people, academics, and the ulama, and put them in one room or in a big hall and formed the Muslim Council of Britain. And we should be going to drive such an organization in this country so we can go forward with AI, whether it's our schooling, this LGBT. We have no leadership at this moment. And unless we as professionals sitting here say we as Islamic Medical Association is going to approach the Association of Muslim Lawyers and the other groups and call these guys together, we need to do it. We can't be waiting for the ulama to carry on, because at the end of the day, we're spending the money, the business guys and the professionals, to run those jamiyats and the mifaqs and everything else. We need to start moving on now.
Jazakallah, thank you. Very valid points. Thank you so much. Any other questions? Okay. So just to conclude, Jazakallah, so I want to say thank you so much for the attendance and for the interest in this topic. Just a point about where we're going with this. So, this just sparks a debate, like many of the speakers have already mentioned here. Many more meetings, and Maulana mentioned about the link, joining Al-Balagh Academy, learning more about AI. So that's just to spark the interest, and even from the IMA side, we're likely to have, I'm sure, more CMEs coming up, so look out for the space as well, and hopefully you'll be part of those platforms as well. So I'll also say that, we really thank you. The IMA would not be anything without its members. So as Irshad mentioned yesterday also, for those that haven't paid up their membership, we appeal to you to please do so. And inshallah, we hope that you also be part of the IMA. And if you're not a member, then join us. Most people that work in the IMA give up their time unselfishly. And, we try to make this, and it's been a great success. And just this turnout really makes us very happy. We're very, very appreciative. And just a quick few house rules. Remember, from 10 to 10:30 is the IMASA annual general meeting. And then there's tea. And at 11 o'clock, the session starts again. So to my left, there's a partition here. Yesterday we had a bit of a problem. I think some people left their bags and then went for tea and came back and realized they were in a different space because the partition had already been put up. So if you're going to leave the hall, please take your belongings with you. There'll be a partition that will be coming across, dividing the left from the right. So again, once again, I thank you. We thank our speakers as well. And I just got a small little gift to give each of my speakers, which I'll be handing out from the IMA. But Jazakallah khair, and thank you so much for all your participation. Assalamu alaikum.